ನಮಾಮಿ ಭಗವತ್ಪಾದಂ ಶಂಕರಂ ಲೋಕಶಂಕರಂ. ಪರಮಪೂಜ್ಯ ಉಭಯ ಶ್ರೀಗಳವರ ಪಾದಾರವಿಂದಗಳಿಗೆ ಸಾಷ್ಟಾಂಗ ಪ್ರಣಾಮಗಳನ್ನು ಸಮರ್ಪಿಸುತ್ತಾ, ಅವರ ದಿವ್ಯವಾದ ಉಪಸ್ಥಿತಿ ಇಲ್ಲೇ ಮೇಲೆ ಇದೆ. ಅವರ ದಿವ್ಯವಾದ ಉಪಸ್ಥಿತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಚಾತುರ್ಮಾಸ್ಯ ವ್ರತಾರಂಭದ ಮೊದಲನೆಯ ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮ ಶಿಬಿರ ರಿಟ್ರೀಟ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಇಂದು ಆರಂಭವಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. 2 ತಿಂಗಳ ಕಾಲ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂಯಸ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರತಿ ಶನಿವಾರ ಭಾನುವಾರ ಇದು ನಡೆಯಲಿದೆ. ಈ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮವನ್ನು ಇಂದು ವೇದ ಘೋಷದೊಂದಿಗೆ ಆರಂಭಿಸೋಣ.
ಶ್ರೀ ಗುರುಭ್ಯೋ ನಮಃ. ಹರಿ ಓಂ. ತ್ವಾ ಗಣಪತಿಗುಂ ಹವಾಮಹೇ ಕವಿಂ ಕವೀನಾಮುಪಮಶ್ರವಸ್ತಮಂ. ಜ್ಯೇಷ್ಠರಾಜಂ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣಾಂ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಣಸ್ಪತ ಆನಃ ಶೃಣ್ವನ್ನೋತಿಭಿಃ ಸೇದಸಾದನಂ. ಮಹಾಗಣಪತಯೇ ನಮಃ. ವೃಕ್ಷಸ್ಯ ಸಂಪುಷ್ಪಿತಸ್ಯ ದೋರಾದ್ಗಂಧೋ ವಾತ್ಯೇವಂ ಪುಣ್ಯಸ್ಯ ಕರ್ಮಣೋ ದೋರಾದ್ಗಂಧೋ ವಾತಿ ಯಥಾಸಿ ಧಾರಾಂ ಕರ್ತೆ ಹಿತಾಮವಗ್ರಾಮೇ ಯಜ್ಜುವೆ ಜುವೆ ಹವಾ ವಿಶ್ವಜಸ್ಯಾಮಿ ಕರ್ತಂ ಪತಿಷ್ಯಾಮಿ ತ್ಯೇವಮೃತಾದಾತ್ಮಾನಂ ಜುಗುಪ್ಸೇತ್. ಹರಿ ಓಂ.
ವೇದಾಂತ ಭಾರತಿ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯ ಮಹಾಸಂರಕ್ಷಕರಾಗಿದ್ದಂತಹ ಶೃಂಗೇರಿ ಜಗದ್ಗುರು ಪರಮಪೂಜ್ಯ ಶ್ರೀ ಶ್ರೀ ಮಹಾಸ್ವಾಮಿಗಳವರ ಮತ್ತು ಸಂರಕ್ಷಕರಾಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ಎಡತೊರೆ ಯೋಗಾನಂದೇಶ್ವರ ಮಠದ ಪೀಠಾಧೀಶ್ವರ ಆಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ಪರಮಪೂಜ್ಯ ಶ್ರೀ ಶ್ರೀಗಳವರ ಮಾರ್ಗದರ್ಶನದಲ್ಲಿ ಅನೇಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳು ನಡೀತಾ ಇವೆ. ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇದು ಕೂಡ ಒಂದು. ಈ ರಿಟ್ರೀಟ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮತ್ತು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದಿರತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿ ಉಪನ್ಯಾಸಕರಾಗಿ ಬಂದಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ನೀಲೇಶ್ ಓಕ್ ಅವರ ಪರಿಚಯವನ್ನು ಮತ್ತು ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನು, ತಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರಿಗೆ ಸ್ವಾಗತವನ್ನು ಕೋರಲಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ವೇದಾಂತ ಭಾರತಿ ಟ್ರಸ್ಟಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಒಬ್ಬರಾಗಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ರವಿಶಂಕರ್ ಅವರು ಈ ರಿಟ್ರೀಟ್ ಪ್ರೋಗ್ರಾಮ್ನ ಆರಂಭಕಾರರು ಮತ್ತು ಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಜವಾಬ್ದಾರಿಯನ್ನು ತೆಗೆದುಕೊಂಡು ನಡೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬರ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥವರು. ನಾಟ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ, ಇನ್ ಅದರ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸಸ್ ಆಲ್ಸೋ ಇನ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ. ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಅಯೋಧ್ಯೆ, ಲಖನೌ ಮತ್ತು ಡೆಲ್ಲಿ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ 2 ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ಅನೇಕ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮಗಳನ್ನು ಪರಿಪೂರ್ಣವಾಗಿ ಆಯೋಜನೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾರ್ಯಾರನ್ನು ಹೇಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ಜೋಡಿಸ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ವೇದಾಂತ ಭಾರತಿಗೆ ವಿಶೇಷವಾಗಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಒಂದು ಹೆಸರನ್ನು, ಕೀರ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ತಂದು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥವರು ನಾವು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ರವಿಶಂಕರ್.
ಎಡತೊರೆ ಶ್ರೀ ಯೋಗಾನಂದೇಶ್ವರ ಸರಸ್ವತಿ ಮಠಾಧೀಶ್ವರಾನಾಂ ಪರಮ ಪೂಜಾನಾಂ ಪರಮಹಂಸ ಪರಿವ್ರಾಜಕಾಚಾರ್ಯಾಣಾಂ ಶ್ರೀ ಶ್ರೀ ಶಂಕರ ಭಾರತಿ ಮಹಾಸ್ವಾಮಿನಾಂ ತತ್ಕರಕಮಲ ಸಂಜಾತಾನಾಂ ಶ್ರೀ ಶ್ರೀ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಾನಂದ ಭಾರತಿ ಸ್ವಾಮಿನಾಂ ಉಭಯಶಾಂ ಶ್ರೀ ಚರಣಾನಾಂ ಸಾಷ್ಟಾಂಗ ಪ್ರಣಾಮ ಸಮರ್ಪಯಾನಾಂ. ಸದಾಶಿವಸಮಾರಂಭಾಂ ಶಂಕರಾಚಾರ್ಯ ಮಧ್ಯಮಾಂ ಅಸ್ಮದಾಚಾರ್ಯ ಪರ್ಯಂತಾಂ ವಂದೇ ಗುರು ಪರಂಪರಾಂ. We are at a very special occasion here, and the reason why I say that is that this is the 50th year of sannyas of Sri Sri Mahasannidhanam Sri Sri Bharati Tirtha Mahaswamiji, who is the Peethadishwar of Dakshinamnaya Sringeri Sharada Peeth. And he has given a special message of the Kalyana Vrishti Stotras to be recited by everybody in our society. Having said that, the Kalyana Vrishti Abhiyan has taken momentum, and the Peethadhishwar of Yedutare Sri Yoganandeshwara Saraswati Mutt has taken upon himself to spread this Abhiyan to 3 lakhs of people for a Mahasamarpana in palace grounds in the coming months. Chaturmasa has begun from the Guru Purnima, and it's a special occasion. And because of this Abhiyan, we are lucky and blessed that Ubhay Gurus are now in Bangalore in Jairam Seva Mandali. Jairam Seva Mandali trustees have been graceful and very kind to allow and give this whole place to Ubhay Gurugal for their Chaturmasa in this place. Vedanta Bharati is the spiritual wing of Yedutare Mutt, and it has spread across the world. And they are doing yeoman service for the upliftment of people. This is people at large, and to spread the message of Ekatma Bhava. We from Vedanta Bharati extend a warm welcome to each of you. Grateful that all of you have come today on a Saturday afternoon, spending your time here, and we are going to make it fruitful. Following the Adesha of His Holiness to spread the message of knowledge during this Pavitra Chaturmasa, a series of retreat programs have been organized over Saturdays and Sundays. Some of them are 3.5 hours, a few of them are a day-long program. The target audience is very specific. We want to maintain the uniformity of talks and address the specific needs of specific groups of people. If you have seen the links that you have registered it, we have groups of people like lawyers, doctors, Vedantic people, then we have the Ayurvedic students, the physiotherapists, and so on. Today is the first retreat of this series of retreat programs being conducted during this Chaturmasa, and it also happens to be the 71st retreat organized by Vedanta Bharati across the country. And this includes the medical colleges, IITs, IIMs at various places from Lucknow, Delhi, Ayodhya, Gulbarga, several in Japatkatte particularly, as well as in Kanpur, and also the latest one a few weeks ago was in Kaladi in Kerala. If you want to know more about what Vedanta Bharati is doing, there are small pictures there with a QR scan, and if you can scan those QR codes, you can see an introductory video of what Vedanta Bharati is doing across the globe. I have a question. How many of us sitting here, you can raise your hands, believe that Ramayana and Mahabharata are only mythology? Not many. And how many of you believe that Ramayana and Mahabharata really took place? That shows it. So today we have a very special guest, and he's an international speaker. He's a specialist in dating. I'm sorry, don't mistake me. He dates the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And most of you know him well. He's well known through his books as well as through YouTube, particularly the Ranveer Show. We welcome with an applause Shri Nilesh Oak. He, being a chemical engineer, doing his executive MBA, showed interest in astronomy, archaeology, geology, genetics, quantum mechanics, economics, philosophy, and ancient narratives. He's a corporate trainer. He's a person who can tell you what life is about. He's a Scrum Master. He's a Black Belt Master. He also teaches at the Institute of Advanced Sciences at the Dartmouth University in Massachusetts, US. Though he resides most of the time in US, he spends most of the time in India of late. Amongst several books that he has written, is when did Mahabharata happen, the historic Rama, the Bhishma Nirvana, and several others. They are probably available on the ground floor at the entrance. There's a stall, and maybe you can have a look when you go by. Of course, in addition, it's also there on Amazon and Kindle. With these few words, I would welcome all of you once again to this special talk on Samanvaya in Bhagavad Gita. May I now request Sri Nilesh Oak ji to give his talk. At a point of time after his talk, when you have a discussion with a question and answer, His Holiness Sri Shankar Bharati Swamiji will also be here. There's a program going upstairs, and that is the Vedanta Chintana Goshti, which is going on for 5 days. But he will come here for half an hour and give his upanyasa and his ashirvachana after Sri Nilesh Oak ji's talk.
With this permission, I will take 2 minutes time. Samanvaya in Bhagavad Gita. Samyak Anvaya Samanvaya. Anvaya means application. ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮನ್ವಯ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು, ಭಗವದ್ಗೀತೆಯ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಏನನ್ನು ಸಮನ್ವಯ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು. ಮೊದಲನೇ ಅಧ್ಯಾಯದ ಕೊನೆಯ ಶ್ಲೋಕದಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಸೃಜ್ಯ ಸಶರಂ ಚಾಪಂ ಶೋಕ ಸಂವಿಘ್ನ ಮಾನಸಃ. ಅರ್ಜುನಿಗೆ ಬಹಳ ದುಃಖವಾಗಿ ಅವನೆಲ್ಲವನ್ನೂ ತ್ಯಜಿಸಿ ಸುಮ್ಮನೆ ಕೂತ್ಕೊಂಡ. 18ನೇ ಅಧ್ಯಾಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊನೆಗೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ನಷ್ಟೋ ಮೋಹ ಸ್ಮೃತಿರ್ಲಬ್ಧ ಸ್ಥಿತೋಸ್ಮಿ ಗತ ಸಂದೇಹ. ಮೊದಲನೇ ವಾಕ್ಯಕ್ಕೂ ಮೊದಲನೇ ಅಧ್ಯಾಯದ ಕೊನೆಯ ವಾಕ್ಯಕ್ಕೂ 8ನೇ ಅಧ್ಯಾಯದ ಈ ಶ್ಲೋಕಕ್ಕೂ ಸಮನ್ವಯ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಇದರ ಮಧ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ 17 ಅಧ್ಯಾಯಗಳಿವೆ. 17 ಅಧ್ಯಾಯಗಳಿಂದ ಕೃಷ್ಣ ಅರ್ಜುನನಿಗೆ ಉಪದೇಶ ಮಾಡಿ ಅರ್ಜುನನು ಸ್ಥಿತೋಸ್ಮಿ ಗತ ಸಂದೇಹ ಅನ್ನುವ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಗೆ ತಂದಿದ್ದಾನೆ. ಒಂದು ಸುಭಾಷಿತ ಇದೆ, ಮನಸ್ಸೇಕಂ ವಚಸ್ಸೇಕಂ ಕರ್ಮಣ್ಯೇಕಂ ಮಹಾತ್ಮನಾಂ. ಮಹಾತ್ಮರು, ಜ್ಞಾನಿಗಳು ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಯೋಚನೆಯನ್ನು ಸಚ್ಚಿಂತನೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೋ ಅದಕ್ಕನುಗುಣವಾಗಿ ಮಾತನಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು ಮಾತನಾಡಿದ್ದು ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೋ ಅದಕ್ಕನುಗುಣವಾಗಿ ಕರ್ಮವನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಮಹಾತ್ಮರು. ಮನಸ್ಸಿ ಅನ್ಯತ್ ವಚಸಿ ಅನ್ಯತ್ ಕರ್ಮಣ್ಯ ಅನ್ಯತ್ ದುರಾತ್ಮನಾಂ ಸುಭಾಷಿತ. ಯಾರು ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೋ ಅದಕ್ಕನುಗುಣವಾಗಿ ಮಾತನಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಮನಸ್ಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡೋದೇ ಒಂದು, ಮಾತನಾಡೋದೇ ಒಂದು. ಅಲ್ಲೆರಡಕ್ಕೂ ಸಮನ್ವಯ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಮತ್ತು ಅವರು ಮಾತನ್ನ ಆಡ್ದ ಹಾಗೆ ನಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಇನ್ನೊಂದು. ಅಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಅವರ ಮಾತಿಗೆ, ಅವರ ಚಿಂತನೆಗೆ ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ಕರ್ಮಕ್ಕೆ ಸಂಬಂಧ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವರು ದುರಾತ್ಮರು. ದುರಾತ್ಮರು ಅಂದರೆ ದುಷ್ಟರು ಅನ್ನೋ ಅರ್ಥ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅವರು ಮೆಂಟಲ್ ಇಂಬ್ಯಾಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ, ಅವರ ಮಾನಸಿಕವಾಗಿ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಅಸ್ವಾಸ್ಥ್ಯ, ಕರ್ಮದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಷ್ಠೆ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ. ಈಗ ನಾವು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ನೀಲೇಶ್ ಓಕ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಕ್ಕಂತಹ ವಿಚಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಅಥವಾ ಭಗವದ್ಗೀತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ಇಷ್ಟು ದಿನಗಳ ಕಾಲ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ರವಿಶಂಕರ್ ಅವರು ಭಗವದ್ಗೀತೆ ಚಿಂತನೆ ನಡೆಸ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಆನ್ಲೈನಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ. ಆ ಎಲ್ಲ ವಿಷಯಗಳನ್ನು ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮಯ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋಬೇಕು? ನಮ್ಮ ಮನಸ್ಸಿನ ಚಿಂತನೆಗೋ, ನಮ್ಮ ಮಾತಿಗೋ, ನಮ್ಮ ಕರ್ಮಕ್ಕೋ, ಇದು ಮೂರನ್ನೂ ಸೇರಿಸಿ ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಜೀವನದಲ್ಲಿ ಪಡೆಯಬೇಕಾಗಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅಂತಿಮವಾಗಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಪುರುಷಾರ್ಥಕ್ಕೋ ಇಷ್ಟು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ಬಹುಶಃ ಭಗವದ್ಗೀತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮಗೆಲ್ಲವೂ ಅರ್ಥವಾಗತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಅನಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಅರ್ಜುನ ನಿಮಿತ್ತ ಮಾತ್ರ. ಭಗವಂತ ಬಹುಶಃ ಮಾನವ ಕುಲಕ್ಕೆ ಉಪದೇಶ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಅಂಶಗಳು ಭಗವದ್ಗೀತೆಯಲ್ಲಿದೆ. ಈ ಭಗವದ್ಗೀತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹೇಳಿದೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟವಾಗಿ ಅರ್ಥ ತಿಳ್ಕೋಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಶಂಕರ ಭಗವತ್ಪಾದರ ಭಾಷ್ಯವನ್ನು ಓದಬೇಕು. ಆಗ ಎಲ್ಲ ಶ್ಲೋಕಗಳ ಸರಿಯಾದ ಅರ್ಥವಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಹೋದರೆ ನಮಗೆ ತೋಚಿದ್ದನ್ನು ಆ ಶ್ಲೋಕಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತೇವೆ. ಆ ಶ್ಲೋಕದ ಅರ್ಥ ನಮಗೆ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತಾದರೆ ಶಂಕರ ಭಗವತ್ಪಾದರ ಭಾಷ್ಯವನ್ನು ಅದು ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಪ್ರಾಮಾಣಿಕವಾದ್ದು. ಆಗ ನಮಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸಂಶಯವೂ ನಿವಾರಣೆ ಆಗತ್ತೆ. ಬಹುಶಃ ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ನೀಲೇಶ್ ಓಕ್ ಇದೇ ಅಂಶಗಳನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇವತ್ತು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಶುಭಮಸ್ತು. ಪ್ಲೀಸ್.
Namaskar to everyone. Can you hear me well? Okay. So, my thought is to put some random thoughts on Bhagavad Gita in the context of Samanvaya, but also Samavaya. Anyone knows the difference between the two? Okay, we'll just go through the example. This is not a test or exam of any kind. Okay. I think it's going in between, so not sure. I see. All right. In case this doesn't work, I can do without it also, okay? So I'm a corporate trainer. I have faced all kinds of situations before. Let me just begin with my introduction to Bhagavad Gita. When I was very young, in fact, the way my parents, my father is no more, but my mother and my father both were primary teachers in Maharashtra. And all education they did, they never taught us anything. Of course, they were great teachers in the school. But by way of education, I remember my mother doing, and I have an elder brother. So the Shiksha in the Vedanga, that we call Shiksha, O, A, E, E, and then Ka, Kha, Ga, Ga, and so on. She just wrote it in her beautiful writing, and just posted it. There were 2 windows in the house, and we owned individual windows, This is my window and the other one is my brother's. She just posted that. And that's all I remember. And the next thing is we learned OIE. I mean, there was no effort to teach it. The second thing, I think a great thing she did, I did not had any thoughts about it that time, and I enjoyed it, is she introduced both of us to a Marathi translation of Bhagavad Gita. Most of you would have heard the name Vinoba Bhave. So he has translated the whole thing called Gita-I, I as in mother. And so I have most of these things by heart even then. And I found this very useful because whereas I couldn't understand Sanskrit, I could understand everything that was there in that Gita even right at that age, So that was the advantage. So that kind of happened on one side. The second connection with Bhagavad Gita came few years later. Maybe when I was, I don't remember exactly, but when I was introduced to the so-called science, maybe 7th grade, 6th, 7th grade, I had an NCERT. I mean, now the NCERT has a very different feeling, but that's not the case. I'm talking late 70s, So physics, chemistry, and biology, those 3 subjects right in the 5th grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade. So I got very fascinated by what was happening there. And in a very small village in Maharashtra where I was studying, I was hearing from people in general, anytime I will come home and tell my relatives or friends the fascinating thing I learned in, say, chemistry and physics. And I would hear something like, oh, this is all there in our Vedas. Okay, so I was curious to where it is, and the small village that I lived, there were no Vedas, believe it or not, but we did not have a copies of Vedas. I'm not saying even if they were there, they would have been very useful, which I learned afterwards. The reason is, unless you have a context, how many of you have read, say, Rigveda? Open a book of Rigveda with a translation, and yeah, few? Okay, very good. These are very brave individuals, by the way, okay, like me. And what happens? Like, what context you read, for example? Yeah?
I just got a translation from some authors in Yugas recent translation. I was just trying to learn about Indra.
About Indra, okay. Yeah, so because somebody told me all science that I'm studying is there, I wanted to do this, but the village did not have it. And then I said, oh, we don't have it, so what do we do? They said, oh, everything is there in Bhagavad Gita too. So I said, okay, so that was my first Samanvaya, so I started there and coming back to that point. Okay, I said, is there? So actually when I started reading Bhagavad Gita the second time, I would say, as a Gitai, or also this time I started the English one with the translation, Sanskrit one with the translation, Marathi translation. I was looking for everything that I was studying in the school to see somewhere there, and I did not find it, so that was kind of a second disappointment. I said, okay, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm not getting it something. Few years have to go by, and I came to 8th grade, and I was fortunate. The school I went to, I don't know if you went to school something like that. In 8th, 9th, 10th grade, the high school that I went, again it was a village high school, but we had to have one adhyay of Bhagavad Gita by heart before we could appear for an exam. How many of you had something similar? Have you heard about it? Yeah, somebody there, thank you. Okay, so because of that, I was there 8th, 9th and 10th, 3 grades. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, a tricky question. How many Bhagavad Gita adhyay you think I have by heart? 3. Okay, and so how does this become useful? It becomes useful in many different ways, but I will fast forward to 2018. I'll come back to the subject. Me and my wife, Ashwini, we were invited at the Chinmaya Foundation, the birthplace of Adi Shankaracharya. I mean, you may know the Kaladi, and I don't know if there is a debate about it, but Kaladi is his father's place, and Veliyanad is his maternal home, right? So that's where we stayed for 4 weeks, and I taught a summer workshop on Mahabharata. So on a humorous note, I'm saying, when we went to take the prasad in the Prasada Gruha, just before you take prasad, they have the tradition of reciting the whole 15th adhyay of Bhagavad Gita, the Purushottam Yoga. Okay, and so, I mean, we were going to do namaskar and start, and they said start, and by that they meant start reciting Bhagavad Gita 15th adhyay. Fortunately, the 15th adhyay was one of the 3 that I had by heart, and so they started chanting. My wife did not know at that time. I'm just saying the effect what person can have. Fortunately, I knew it, right? So I was reciting, and Ravi Shankar ji can translate those who don't understand Marathi. But my wife said to me after that, he said, "Baba re, laz rakles." No, because otherwise we would have looked like a fool, the 2 of us. Everyone knows the 15th chapter, at least you knew. Then she took, this is not that long ago, 2018 I said. Then she took so much, like it hurt her so much, that now she knows more verses of Bhagavad Gita by heart than I do. Okay, so that's what it is. Yeah, and she takes now Bhagavad Gita classes, meaning not like a teaching classes, but in a group. Through COVID was another time that she did, and now there are many groups that she has gone through, like round 1, round 2, round 3, and so on. Talking of Bhagavad Gita, there are many different routes we can take. Okay, since Ravi Shankar ji mentioned the dating route, okay, and I can offer advice for any kind of dating, by the way, okay. Yeah, so it so happens that I do counseling in America, not by choice, but certain things happen, and then people come to me, and it seemed to work. But that's a different subject. No, dating as in like when did it happen? But does it even matter? I think Ravi Shankar ji asked some great questions. He said, how many of you think that this is just a mythology, just a story, and the message matters, and it's the not actual event? Well, both Ramayana and Mahabharata are called itihasa. And Bhagavad Gita comes in the Mahabharata. What is the definition of a itihasa? We have, I don't know if, how many of you have met him. If I may ask you for 5 seconds to stand up. My good friend Yashadip Devdar, okay? A Bangaloreite for a long time now, originally from Maharashtra, IIT Bombay, and then IIM Ahmedabad, and then a businessman. How many of you, just so curious, how many of you by random chance happened to look at the YouTube channel called 21, like a number 21 notes? How many of you? Nobody? Okay, you have got your homework cut out for you. Okay, so Yashadip, essentially what he has done, of 100% dedication, he created this 21 notes as a as a platform to take the entire Valmiki Ramayana and take that Valmiki Ramayana original as is, iti ha asa, this is how it happened, to everyone, to the audience of 21st century. The reason I mentioned that is there were many itihasa possibly, but all that has survived for us is Mahabharata and Ramayana. And Bhagavad Gita happens to come into that. I want to randomly select some of the instances related to Bhagavad Gita, and then we will have some time for question and answer. Related to my research work, so remember where I told you the story? That I thought everything, whatever we want to know, all the science is in Bhagavad Gita. Fast forward to about 1991, 1992, 93. I went to America, to Canada for doing my master's. And I had an interest, very fascinating interest into quantum mechanics, and that's, I think, how we got connected again. I haven't done much in quantum mechanics since 2009. I'll tell you the reason for that. But before that, I have researched on it. I have presented papers in American philosophical societies and whatnot. So I used to spend my summer in California, Berkeley, which is where my professor was from, and I used to take summer undergraduate courses in quantum mechanics. You have to take undergraduate courses and still you don't understand what's going on and something like this. In fact, my job was the place I was staying. They offered me free board and staying. And in return, I have to cook there so that I could stay there. And it's a great thing that happened to me in that summer of 92, 93. I made close to 20 to 30 Nobel laureates. And I have fed them khichdi, the dal chawal khichdi. And the simple thing I learned, somebody taught me there in a Hare Krishna type of setup. He said, even if you don't know how to cook well, put lots of ghee and it tastes better. So many Nobel laureates have eaten my khichdi, and so they do that. So during that time, something interesting happened. So I said, okay, if I want to, so I was researching on certain subjects, and I was explaining, like Bhagavad Gita was my reference book, like Pratyaksha, Avagamam, Dharmam, Susukham. So Pratyaksha, how am I going to do it by Indriya Pramanya? One person says, why do you not study Darshan, Nyaya Darshana? This was an American professor, by the way, American PhD, one of the student of Sir Karl Popper, Bruce Mangan. I said, Darshana. I had never heard about Darshana at that time. 91, 92, I had not heard of Darshana. So I said, what is it? And so he introduced me to, introduced meaning he said, go study Nyaya Darshan. So because of Nyaya Darshan, then I studied Sankhya and some other things. What is something interesting that came up? Bhagwan Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. How many of you have studied it in some fashion? Okay. I don't know how many of you would agree with me on that, but if you don't, that means you have a homework cut out for me. I didn't realize this, but if you, now that I have studied it for many years, if I take Bhagwan Patanjali's Yoga Sutra and Bhagavad Gita, I see no difference. Like for every sutra that I see in the Bhagwan Patanjali, it is there in the Bhagavad Gita in some form. That is how impressive it is. So that's how my journey began. Then come 1994, again back to Bhagavad Gita. My master's thesis was ready, and I had maybe a couple of weeks free to myself before I defend my thesis and get into the corporate world. So I said, what do? I have absolutely nothing to do. So I go to this is in Canada, University of Alberta. I go to the library, the Indian section, and I wanted to find out where exactly Bhagavad Gita appears in the Mahabharata. Until then I knew it is in Mahabharata. I did not know exactly where it is, or it did not matter. Bhagavad Gita is usually available in general form. So I went and opened the Bhandarkar Oriental Critical Edition. I opened the book Bhishma Parva. I started reading it, looking for that keyword, Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. I never reached there. Just before that, some very fascinating things came up. Like all kinds of descriptions of the sky, astronomy references, page after page, and chapter number 2 and chapter number 3. And I never went further. And something very fascinating, at least that I could understand. And I said, wow, this is not even possible. For example, how many of you have watched my talks before, so that I'm not repeating the same thing? Okay. How many of you have not watched my talks before? Okay. You know what you need to do afterwards. Okay. All right. So there was this one verse, Ya Chaisha Visruta Rajas, Vyasadeva, Bhagwan Vyasadeva is telling to Dhritarashtra just a day before the war. Ya Chaisha Visruta Rajas, Trailokya Sadhu Sammata, Arundhati Tayapesha Vasishta Prushtata Kruta. One of the astronomy combination, the Saptarshi, everyone knows Saptarshi, 4 stars and a tail, 3 stars. The middle star is the Vasishta. Next to that is a very small star, Arundhati Darshana Nyaya. After the weddings, some couples will go and say it. That is Arundhati. Vyasadeva was saying at the time of Mahabharata war, a day before, Arundhati is walking ahead of Vasishta. Arundhati has placed her husband behind. And I knew little astronomy, and I said, this is not how it is today. So I talked to some of the professor, one Indian professor, Professor Murdeshwar, and he said, yeah, I've heard about it, but nobody has done anything. And I thought, I have got 2 weeks before defending my thesis, let me solve that problem. I think it was not a bad idea, except my timing was wrong. Okay, so it took me 15 years. So instead of 2 weeks, from 1994 to 2009, so when I was doing some other things, I did that. Long story short, Mahabharata has close to 300 astronomy observations, and if you bring them together, like solving a jigsaw puzzle or crossword puzzle, okay, they come together. How many of you solve a crossword puzzle? Okay, so what happens? Initially when we start, we are not sure if I'm going to solve it today. But once you get couple of words, then magic happens, right? Suddenly you start getting the clues. Something like that happened. This one particular Arundhati clue became that clue. Until I could solve it, nothing. I had all the 300 observations, they were not fitting together. But as soon as the Arundhati fit together, actually what it did, they were possibly fitting together, but I did not have the confidence. But now this gave me so much confidence that I'm on the right track. And this was in May of 2009. And in less than 2-3 months, I solved the whole puzzle of 300 astronomy observations. And I had the date. Okay, that date happens to be 5561 BC. But what that has to do with the Bhagavad Gita? We talked about the Samanvaya. Samanvaya in the sense of how you bring different things together. So karma, jnana, bhakti, dhyana, etc. Okay. Now there is another word, samavaya. What does that mean? The English translation, I don't know if it's a good translation. It's inherence. It's the inherent, intrinsic quality of something. Okay. So everyone has heard Ramanujacharya as a name. How many of you have heard another name from that sampradaya? Yamuna Muni. Some, very good. Not many people, not many hands go up. Everyone knows Ramanujacharya, not many knows the Yamuna Muni, his guru, for example. So if Yamuna Muni wrote 32 verses, and I'm not going to go into that, but there he talks about the Samanvaya in a very beautiful way. He's just the addition. He says karma plus dhyana plus jnana equal to bhakti, or something of that form, or these three together are a bhakti. The Samavaya, you can call it sampradaya. I'm of a Samavaya school rather than Samanvaya school. I think of it as a, what is your favorite? Oh, I mean Bangalore. Yes, Mysore Pak. Think of a what do you call wadi? Marathi we call wadi, like a block. A block of Mysore Pak. How do you separate out? If you have a Mysore Pak block here, how do you separate out the volume of this from the weight, from the ingredients? Actually, you cannot. Right? So I consider that those three things, just as a way of example, that's like a karma, dhyana, jnana, etc. And what is a bhakti? That signature Mysore Pak flavor, the umami effect, okay, that's kind of a bhakti. The reason I mention that is Samanvaya is like sometimes you're connecting the things, and that's good, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this. But Samavaya is just intrinsically there, like these 300 observations, they came together is not by coincidence. It is actually a kruti of Bhagwan Vyasadeva. After the current Mahabharata that we have actually has 4 recensions, right? 4 recensions by the time it comes to us. So Vyasadeva wrote it 18 years after the Mahabharata war. Mahabharata tells us it took him 3 years to do it. Then he taught his disciples, okay, Sumantu, Paila, Vaishampayan, and so on. Then what happens? The way it comes to us, in a Janmejaya Sarpasatra, Vaishampayan is telling it to Janmejaya. In that audience, someone is sitting there, Roma Harshana Sauti, He listens to it. Then he goes to Naimisharanya, where there is another yajna going on with the Shavanak Rishi. And they say, where did you come from? And what did you hear? He says, Mahabharata, and coming from this. And he recites it. Those are the 4 recensions. But when Romarshana Sauti is describing Mahabharata, he says, do you know how this Grantha is made? This applies to Bhagavad Gita also, because Bhagavad Gita is part of Mahabharata, but the entire Mahabharata. He says, Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudham Kutuhalat. This particular Grantha is filled of Kutuhal, curiosities. Then, Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudham, Gudha, mysterious things. It's filled with mysterious things. And Grantham Granthi, it has got twist. Okay, how many of folks here from IT background? Okay, in the modern language, we call it encryption. Right? When you're sending an email, nobody in between can read it. So this is a planned thing. And why is it a planned thing? Because we have a itihasa for these reasons. Only India has a itihasa. Outside if you go, now they may have it, I don't know. But as it stands today, after all the burning, whether it is a Nalanda and Takshashila here, or in Mexico City, when they burnt the library of Tenochtitlan, okay, that was burning for 1 month also. So we don't know what has been lost. Same thing in Egypt. By the way, there is a side project that I'm working on, possibly to get access to the Hindu documents that were in the Egyptian library. Now, what I'm going to get, I have no idea. Okay, that's something we are working on, but somewhere they have found it, and they think I'm an expert. You know the reality, I'm not an expert. But I'm actually taking somebody from Mysore who knows the southern languages, then somebody from eastern part of India, and something that we are trying to see if we can get our hands on. But they know that these are Indian documents, and they don't know what language they are in. And this goes back to 2000 years or so. So it will be very interesting to see what we find. Coming back to this. Bhagavad Gita, so somebody asked me, so okay Nilesh, so I have figured out from the astronomy observations 300 plus, this is outside Bhagavad Gita. Okay, within Mahabharata, but outside Bhagavad Gita, they all come together and give you a specific date, no other date. I'm sure you would have heard many other dates for the timing of Mahabharata. I won't ask you what are dates you have heard. I can tell you, if it's not 5561 BCE, it is wrong. Not because I'm saying it, you can go back and check it. It's that very clear. But what about Bhagavad Gita itself? And I just want to give you a different drushti. You would have learned Bhagavad Gita in different ways. Of course, Guruji, Swamiji goes through that different ways. Adi Shankaracharya made a commentary. Everyone knows that, the commentary on Bhagavad Gita. Now, you know that there are commentaries on commentaries. Okay, so for example, take Vachaspati Mishra. And just write in the introduction, or he will say, the Samshaya is required. Samshaya is a good, but he says Samshaya should be like this. Anyone remembers? Saprayojana and Sandigdha. That's how the Samshaya should be. Why is he talking of Saprayojana and Sandigdha? Again, Bhagavad Gita gives the answer. 2 verses from Bhagavad Gita, I'll take. We have, I don't remember the chapter, Adnyascha Ashraddha Dhanascha Samshayatma Vinashyati. Right? Adnyascha, the person doesn't have a knowledge. Okay, the Marathi Vinoba's translation, see, that comes very handy. So actually I translate in my mind by going to Vinoba's Gitai. Nase jnana, nase shraddha, samshayi nasala pura. No knowledge, no shraddha, and full of doubt. But that is not the doubt that even Shankaracharya is referring to when he is writing in a commentary, and that is not the doubt even Vachaspati Mishra is referring to when he is saying the doubt is good. It has to be Saprayojan and Sandigdha. Because this doubt that Krishna is referring to, Bhagavan Krishna is referring to, Samshayatma Vinashyati, the one that Samshaya takes you to total destruction. It is the Samshaya of a mind. And so when Ravi Shankarji asked the question, how many of you think it's a mythology? No, nobody raised the hand here. If it was another audience, many hands might have gone up. And then you say, why do you think like this? And they say, no, that's what I think, and that's it. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, you have to actually work on, you have to approach any problem from an agnostic point of view. I approach this from an agnostic point of view. Even the Mahabharata as a history. So to ask the question, is it a history? In my Shraddha, I felt that it is a history in the sense of a itihasa. But how do I go about proving it? So I looked at some things which we are convinced, or our masses are convinced that this is a itihasa. So I went around and asked them, what is it that convinces you? For example, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Did he really happen, or it's just a story? And people said, no, I'm confident it happened. I said, what evidence convinces you that Shivaji Maharaj actually happened? And then I took that and I started applying to basically Mahabharata. But back to Bhagavad Gita, how many of you, if I tell you that Bhagavad Gita also, it needs some stretch, okay? Because Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata, so the reader is expected to read the rest of the Mahabharata if required. Okay, you get those stories. For example, if you look at the Varnashram, Chatur Varnyam Maya Srushtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. What is the translation of that verse as you understand it? Chatur Varnyam Maya Srushtam, it's my creation, Bhagavan Krishna says. Guna Karma Vibhagasha. There are many translations, so I'm not saying there is only one correct translation. Anyone? Guna Karma Vibhagasha. Based on guna and karma, and that's a very one good translation. Now if you keep on studying repeatedly, okay, and if you go to the 18th chapter and like start looking at the verse 40, 41, 42, 43, all the 4 varnas work is given, you get another insight. What is that insight? For example, the Brahman and Kshatriya, if you look at their characteristics, anyone knows those verses? Apalayanam, okay, something. These are not their works, these are their attributes. Okay, so apalayanam is only tested when somebody comes hitting you and then you run away or not run away. Until then, you have to take it on a shraddha. Okay, and then last 2, parichayatmakam karma, shudra sabhavaja, right, like that. Okay, or krushi, go, raksha, vanijya. These are a work. Now this is another way of looking at it. If you look at the first 2 attributes, the Kshatriya, those are attributes like a guna. The emphasis is on the guna. The last 2, Vaishya and Shudra, the emphasis is on the karma. The reason I'm giving you that is these are the insights that did not come to me for a very long time. It took me a long time. Similarly, I want to give you some insights from a Vibhuti Yoga as it relates to my work. Everyone knows the 10th chapter of Vibhuti Yoga? Yeah? I'm not going to test you. Okay, Vibhuti Yoga. So like Krishna is saying how to visualize me, okay, in the Stavaranam Himalaya, among the rivers I am a Janavi, and so on. But I'm going to ask you some questions now, very light questions. So this is happening 5561 BC, or a year of your choice. He says, among the rivers I am Janavi. Now what is that Janavi refers to? Ganga. Okay. Now if you go to Rigveda, or Vedas in general, but take Rigveda, which is the grandest river? Okay. So now see, remember, even Desha Kala Patra. Desha Kala Patra. So that's why we need to know the Vedanga to understand the Vedas. You know, the Jyotisha is required, the context Kalpa is required. So now Vedas, Rigveda has a Saraswati as the grandest river. Why Bhagavan Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is saying, among the rivers I am Janavi? Because the time when he's saying it, Saraswati still exists, but it's not the grandest river. How many of you, now we have some Rigveda experts here, okay? How many of you have read the Nadi Sukta, 10.75, 10th Mandala and 75? If you look at there are 19 rivers mentioned in that Sukta. Saraswati is also mentioned, Ganga, Imam Ganga, Yamuna, it goes like this all the way to Afghanistan. Okay, the 19 rivers are mentioned. Saraswati is mentioned, but write that Nadi Sukta. Now I would just, those people who feel curious, I would encourage you to go back. Sa Prayojana and Sandigdha. Now you have a good reason to go back to Rigveda. Now you have a context to look forward to. You can look at the translation and that's perfectly fine. Otherwise, I even don't understand Rigveda. Okay, I look at multiple translations, typically 3 or 4 translations, and then I make the Samanvaya or Samavaya of this. You will find right in Rigveda, you have this Nadi Sukta where the transition from Saraswati as the grandest river to now Ganga, or actually in that Rigveda, Sindhu as the grandest river. So you see this transition. But you see just Janavi. How about Adityanam Ham Vishnu? Everyone knows from this? Adityanam Ham Vishnu. What is Vishnu? You're going to say Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. But that's not the point. See, Aditya, the 12 sons, 12 Adityas. Among the 12 Adityas, I am Vishnu. How many of you study in the, I talked to Ravi Shankarji, in some context, how many of you study Bhagavad Puran? Some familiarity? Bhagavad Puran? Okay. Again, I'm not going to ask questions, but if you go to the 11th skanda of Bhagavad Puran, and there also there is a chapter on Vibhuti Yoga. I don't remember the number, 23rd, or I may be saying the wrong number. You will see, essentially have the Bhagavad Gita 10th chapter next to you, and then the Bhagavad Puran 11th skanda and Vibhuti Yoga. You are going to have a fascinating day or fascinating evening. What is written in Bhagavad Gita, not just in our times that sometimes we confuse the meaning, maybe before even Bhagavad Puran was written, there were times when people confused the meaning of Bhagavad Gita. And to correct that confusion, the Vibhuti Yoga of Bhagavad Puran was written. And you can see that. For example, Masana Margashirshoyam, you will see in both places. Okay? And what is the verse in Bhagavad Gita? Nakshatrana Maham Shashi. Right? And now you have to have a very strong Shraddha, because I'm going to say something. It may shock you. It's not to be seen in this. When I'm saying this, I'm sitting or standing on the shoulders of the acharyas. Okay? So the babies tantrums are accepted by the parents, something like this. Many acharyas have done the translation of Nakshatrana Maham Shashi as a wrong translation. Wrong translation not for ordinary purposes, because anything has three types of meaning: Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik, Adhyatmik. But from a astronomy point of view, it is a wrong translation. What is the many people have done the translation? What translation you are aware? Nakshatrana Maham Shashi. Among the nakshatras, I am the moon. That's not the translation. If you look at the entire Mahabharata, you will find when a nakshatra is mentioned, that basically nakshatra devata is mentioned. I'll give you a few examples. Prajapatyam cha nakshatram grahat tikshna mahadyuti shanaishchara pidayati pidayan pranikodikam. The nakshatra of Prajapati is being afflicted by Saturn, for example. Bhagam nakshatra akramya surya putrena pidyate. The nakshatra, Bhaga nakshatra, there is no Bhaga nakshatra, but we know Purva Falguni, Uttara Falguni, the nakshatra devata is a Bhaga. Something like this. So here, actually, do you know, now this is not from astrology. Any astrologers in the crowd? Because astrology has a slightly different way of looking at it. From the pure astronomy, each nakshatra has a devata. And do you know what is for which nakshatra devata is a Chandra? That is what it is said. Nakshatrana Maham Shashi. That is a Mruga nakshatra. Okay, Soma or Chandra is a devata. Now what do we have to do with this? Why Masanam Margashirshoyam? Now tell me, what is the big deal about Margashirsha month? Now or then? This may look like very casual, but you are not going to look at the Vibhuti Yuga the same way again. Right? My co-researcher, Rupa Bhati, those of you who listen to me, so some time ago when I was doing this and we were not finding the meanings of certain words, I said maybe, Bhagwan Vyasadeva has written this as embellishments in this Vibhuti Yoga. I said maybe it is written as embellishment, we should not spend some time on this. And her Shraddha was much stronger than me. She is based in Gujarat, an architect by profession. She said, no, Nilesh, don't make that mistake. Bhagwan Vyasadeva, there may be Pathabhed and there may be other mistakes. Bhagwan Vyasadeva has not written anything carelessly and casually. Okay, so when we looked at this, so Nakshatrana Maham Shashi, that nakshatra whose nakshatra devata is a Shashi, that is a Mruga nakshatra. Now we start understanding. But what is the reference to Masana Margashirshoyam? And I'm going to come to Adityana Maham Shashi in a minute too. Adityana Maham Vishnu. If you go to Bhagavad Puran, that same Vibhuti Adhyaya Yoga, you know what you're going to find? The Vishnu is also the solar month of Isha. Now, have you heard the 12 solar months? Madhu, Madhav, Nabha, Nabhasya, Tapa, Tapasya, Sahasya. The Isha Urja are the 2 months of Sharad. So Vishnu, Bhagavad Puran combines that as a month with the Isha. That is the first month of Sharad season. Stay with me, I know it's boring. First month of Sharad season. Now, come to the first month of Sharad season in the Mahabharata times. That is Margashirsha. That is when the war began. That's why we celebrate Gita Jayanti into the month of Margashirsha. When does Margashirsha appears in our times? December. And that is the same time as almost Uttarayan. correct? Not the Uttarayan that we celebrate as a festival, that is 14th or 15th January, but astronomically, true Uttarayan is what day? 21st of December. So if Mahabharata was happening today, do you know what Bhishmacharya would have done? Because Bhishmacharya wanted to wait until what? The day of Uttarayan. And that's what Mahabharata says us. So he looked at the setting sun and he said, oh, this is Dakshinayan going on. And I don't want to leave my pran. Okay, so he said, I will stay on the Sharashaya for a long time. If it was happening today, he would have looked at the setting sun. He says, oh, this is Uttarayan. Bye-bye. I am going. He didn't say that. In astronomy, there is a phenomenon which says a shift of our Hindu month, like Margashirsha, lunar month, we don't have to call Hindu month, lunar month, Chaitra, Vaishak, it shifts with respect to season by 1 month every 2000 years. That is due to the precession of the Earth's axis, Sampata Chalan, or Ayanagati, whatever you want to call it. Now, Mahabharata tells you that Bhishmacharya was on the bed of arrows for more than 95 days. There are 100 different references, chronological. The 3 books that he mentioned, I wrote one book, Bhishma Nirvana, just based on that. Do you know why I wrote that book? Whatever I wanted to say in that book, in 300 pages, I had said it in a 1.5 page in my first book. And I thought people are going to get goosebumps. There were no bumps and there were no goose. Okay. So after 5-6 years, I thought maybe let me write another book. The long story short is that the month of Margashirsha, when the war began, is shifted from the day of winter solstice by now 4 months, from the time of Mahabharata. That's why he has to be there on the bed of arrows for 95 days. Okay? And if you do the math, that tells you Mahabharata war happened approximately about 8,000 years. Remember? It takes 2,000 years to shift by 1 month. There is a shift of about 4 months. 4 times 2,000 is 8,000. 4 times 2,000 is 8,000 months. You can get these clues. So I said, Margashirsha. So this in Bhagavad Gita is saying the solar month of the auspicious solar month, or what Krishna would like to say as a Vibhuti Yoga, or his Vibhuti, is the first month of Sharat season. Okay? In the solar calendar, he is saying it is called Vishnu, Aditya Namaham Vishnu. Bhagavad Puran says it is the month of Isha, and Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavad Puran both say Masanam Margashirshoyam, and that month is Margashirsha. So that's how you are going to connect it. Now this can be very boring and tiring, but my point is, depending on whichever way you want to look at Bhagavad Gita and you take it, you can look at it. There is a medicinal people here, but I will tell you some other experiments from I don't know if it's called biology or something. It was a flop experiment, at least it did not work the way I tried it. Me and my brother tried it when we were in high school. So we got very excited. In the 17th Adhyay, there is a verse, Gama Vishicha Bhutani Dharayamyam Ojasa Pushnami Chaushadi Sarva Somo Bhutva Rasatmaka. So the Somaras, or the moon, is what gives the taste to the vegetables or vanaspati or something. So we didn't have a technology, and I'm not sure if we use the technology what it will happen today, but this is going back early 80s. We tried to do an experiment. We looked at the panchang when the moon rises, and we tried to create some watermelon and stuff like that, and try to protect it, from the rays of the moon to see if there's any change in the taste. Well, there wasn't, so I don't know if anything happened. But the reason I'm also talking of the flop experiment is because through this, basically you refine yourself and some interesting ideas come. What else I want to talk about? The spiritual, the Adhyatmic part I'm deliberately avoiding, because that's what something you will hear from the great individuals here. So I thought I'll take you to something else. Yeah, there are some others, but let me take a stop here. If we have a time, I will talk more. Any questions that you have from this or any other videos that you might have seen? Okay, yeah. Any questions? Okay, and by the way, so as Ravi Shankarji mentioned, my 3 books, okay, they are downstairs in case anyone wants to purchase them. Okay. Yeah, please, sir. Can you come closer here? Yeah, okay.
The Puranas have a separate chronology and the king's lists are given. So as per that calculation, whether 5561 BC tallies with that, 1400 BC seems to be more.
1400?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's take this, okay? And this is a good one. We talked about the Samshaya, okay? So what happens is he's saying, and stay with that, he might need that. So he's saying from Puranic chronology, 1400 BCE, you mean, right?
Yes.
BC. Okay, what is the evidence from Puranas?
No, several historians, Indologists, they have made a list of the kings given in the various Puranas and Bhagavata Purana, and they come to that conclusion.
Do you know a specific name?
Yeah, starting from Pargitar, then our Indians also.
Right.
Lal.
Okay, great question. So let me repeat the question. So what he's saying is, did you hear what he said? Pargitar. Okay, he was a British officer here and he took a lot of interest in the Indian chronology. And what he did is he looked at all the Puranas and this king after Parikshit so and so much was a king and his son was this, so and so forth. And we get many sets of such information, and it also goes on to tell what was the total duration between that king and this king, okay? So for example, if you know, you can tell, but so for example, there are 3-4 references I will say: Vishnu Puran, Matsya Puran, Bhagavad Puran, and Skanda Puran. Let's take these 4. That 4 numbers that you are going to hear, listen to me, okay? One of the 4 Puranas says there were about 1100 years between Parikshit, everyone knows Parikshit, and Nanda, Mahapadma Nanda, meaning the time of Chanakya. And therefore, it is understood the time of possibly Alexander, okay, something like this. So if we take this 1100 years and Alexander's times, if you go to Wikipedia, okay, anytime it's okay to go to Wikipedia, but when it comes to anything Hindu, anything Sanatan, okay, Wikipedia becomes Wickedpedia. Okay, but we'll just go for a minute, we'll go with that. So Alexander's times is 300. Do you know that there is no mention of Alexander anywhere in India? How many of you knew that? Zero mention of Alexander. It is only from the Greek records, okay? But be it as it may, so that time is considered approximately 300 BC, Alexander's time, approximately. If you add 1100 to it, what do you get? 1400 BC? The number that he said. Now so kudos to you, or kudos to Parijitar and so on and so forth. Now other Grantha, other Puranas, they say there are 1500 years between the Mahapadmananda and Parikshit. You have heard that? Okay. Skanda Purana says there were 3310 years between Parikshit and Mahapadmananda. Now what are we going to do? That is the problem. So yes, there are numbers, but now you have to select between the two, okay? And if you, depending on which one you select, you will get a number. But going further, so let's say we take that 1400 BCE based on Parijitar. Anyone else supported that? They just repeated Parijitar very likely, right? But now the question is, I'm saying 5561 BCE. Now the Vachaspati Mishra comes into the picture. So if Nilesh Oak was only saying it 5561 BC, you guys have nothing to worry. You say Ravi Shankar ji has invited this guy, he's saying it and I can trust it. As soon as somebody else comes, now we have got a doubt. How are you going to resolve this doubt? What will you guys do? So now you have Parijitar from the Puranas and Nilesh Oak claiming from based on 300 astronomy observations of Mahabharata. What is your choice? By the way, how many Mahabharata happened? 1? Do we agree on that? Who does not agree on that? Oh, maybe there are many Mahabharata. No. We have a great sensible audience here, I'm not that lucky, the different places I go in India. Okay, so if it's a 1 Mahabharata, what is the possibility? We just have 2 claims right now. Actually, there are 130 different claims for the year of Mahabharata war. 130 different claims, okay? So what is the possibility? Either all of us are wrong, that is one possibility, or only one of us is right. Correct? And how do we figure it out? Now we get into Darshana Shastra, Nyaya Darshana. I will not bore you this afternoon, but that's where we get into. So we have to actually create a framework. You know, it's called like a Pancha Avayava. Any Nyaya Darshana expert here before I unnecessarily open my mouth? No? Pancha Avayava. It's a triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing in the context of a theory, in the context of background knowledge. Okay, so you have a pratijna, you have a hetu, you have a udaharan, then you have an application, and then final out. So if you try to apply that, just to cut time, I will not go into it, you will find Parijeter or any of these people who just try to do this based on the genealogy, they don't do it. But let me tell you something what Puranas say actually, that many of these people who use the genealogy forget. Each of this Purana, do you know what it says? When the discussion happens, how many of you are familiar with the podcast? Podcast everyone knows. You think it's a new phenomenon. It's not. All entire our Indian literature is a podcast. Usually two people, one person asks the question and the other person responds, something like this. Do you know what they say? When any time a genealogy is recited during some yajna, during some function, do you know what the person who is saying? Somebody says, can you tell me all the kings that happen in my genealogy or in my thing? Every time they use the word pradhaneneha. Or pradhanya. He says, hey, I don't know all the one, but I will tell you the names of prominent ones. I'm going to do an example here. Who wants to be the brave? Who wants to be the... Okay, they want me to stop. Who wants to be the brave volunteer here? Somebody wants to... I'm just a simple question about Indian... since India became free, like 1947. Simple question. Just for fun. I want to explain you what the pradhanya means. Only the important ones. Somebody daring one wants to stand. I'm going to ask a question. If you say, oh, no, sorry, I don't want to do it, we'll take somebody else. Yeah, please. Just stand for a minute. Just take 1 minute. Nobody should help him. Okay? And please list all the prime ministers of India from 1947 that you can recall. Jawaharlal Nehru, Lal Bahadur Shastri, Indira Gandhi, and he wasn't so sure. No, Indira Gandhi. Chandrasekhar, very good. Moraji Desai, very good. You can start backward or forward, doesn't matter. VP Singh, Vajpayee ji, Rajiv Gandhi. Okay, thank you very much. Give him a big hand, please. Okay. Of course, I know you can help him and Prime Minister Narendra Modi and so on. But the point I want to make is there. Okay, we are only talking of 70 years. And thank you very much for participating. Instead of him, somebody else was there, you might have struggled the same way. Okay, now let's as a together help us get the other names. Gulzari Lal Nanda. Huh? Devegowda, how did we forget Devegowda here? Charan Singh, I.K. Gujral, Manmohan Singh, right? I mean Modi, and it just goes on. And there may be few more that we didn't cover. What is my point? Just 70 years of history, very prominent post, the number one post in India, and if you have to recall it, and it's not about him by the way, it's about any one of us, and we will miss those. And these podcasters, the Hindu podcasters are agreeing, saying, I don't know all the names, I'm going to mention the prominent names. That is the answer to that genealogy list. That's why you don't get it. But if you get a full genealogy list in press, it will go to that back. For example, if you take Skanda Purana, for example, 3310 BCE. Now, why not take Skanda Purana and why only insist on taking, say, Matsya Purana? We don't have an answer to that. So that evidence is what? We have no objective way of testing that evidence other than the way we test it. This is objective enough that we cannot rely on that evidence. Okay, let's go to some other question.
when Rama's story was being told, Krishna was brought into reference, and it was mentioned that Krishna has come many times because the yugas have repeated: Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. It has happened over many times. So why not Mahabharata also has happened before, not just in this Dwapara Yuga and before the Dwapara Yuga?
Correct. So what she's saying is, in principle, Mahabharata could have happened before. Okay. My point is, that can be a point of wonderful argument, and that's great. But before we go on to find out the year of Mahabharata, we must agree on that particular question. Are you with me? Yes, we must agree whether it's only one Mahabharata or multiple Mahabharata. Actually, why that has happened, it's a big issue. Okay. How many of you have heard of Kaka Bhushundi when it comes to Ramayana? There is a Kaka Bhushundi Ramayana, and there is a description that Kaka Bhushundi has seen Ramayana happening 11 times. I don't know exactly what that number is. From an itihasa perspective, if you want to understand itihasa, there could be many different reasons why different versions of Ramayana were written, different takes on Mahabharata or Ramayana were taken. There could be different reasons. As far as the itihasa is concerned, we have Valmiki Ramayana and we have Vyasa's Mahabharata. So even the Bhagavad Puran saying something, we can listen to it, we can debate about it, but if the Mahabharata doesn't say it has happened many times, at least I don't have any other way to go. I'm going to consider Mahabharata happening one time. And if it happens many times, I'm not going to argue with you, but then I would stop saying, okay, which year it happened, because unless we agree that there is which Mahabharata we are talking, I cannot go further. Because for me, the evidence of Mahabharata is Mahabharata evidence from the Mahabharata text. So that's how we will go into logic. Yeah. Same thing. Argument is meant to understand. So argument. See, that's why Samshay is good. Yeah, Yugas repeat exactly the way seasons repeat. Right? So, for example, our chakra, it's a paracyclical. How many of you have heard the name Professor C.K. Raju? Just out of curiosity. Few? Okay. He talks about this. So ours is like, see, for example, if I look through this window, and right now it's the month of July, very likely if I come here next year, exactly same time, and I look through this window, I will see that tree to be green tree, just like leaves there and so on. Similar, not identical. What is that? Have you seen that Kasav Chap Machhar Agarbatti? The mosquito? From a distance, it looks like concentric circles. They are not concentric circles. That's a paracyclical. Like a chakli. You call the chakli too? Kadboli, chakli, something like that. It just goes like that. So it's a similar, it's not identical. That's what our actually the yugas say. In fact, if you go to Rigved says the avatar of Bhagavanta are happening every second. Otherwise, this universe will not sustain. But if it's happening every second, why do we only call Bhagwan Ram, Bhagwan Krishna as only avatar and not others? Or even we just don't know the name. Metaphorically, it can be explained. Our Ganga, river Ganga, right from Gangotri all the way it meets the Bay of Bengal, it's all Pavitra. It's all Pavitra. But Haridwar, Rishikesh, Prayagraj, Varanasi are more Pavitra. You see the intensification of something happening, Tirtha Kshetra, we give that. Similarly, when we see that visibility, we call that avatar in the sense of a discussion. Otherwise, we don't call it. Okay? Yeah.
So my name is Naveen. I'm an independent researcher myself, so your work is very inspiring. Having researched the Ramayana and Mahabharata, having decrypted so many of these metaphors and symbols that aren't obvious when you read it, but when you have background information, you're able to decrypt it. I'm very curious to know what you think about the original purpose of why it was written. Why not just write down all the facts in one place? Why merge so many fields, like Samanvaya, right? Why merge all these fields into a story? Is it so that it survives time and reaches us like a time capsule? Or I'm just curious to know your thoughts about that.
Great question. Okay. Two points to the answer. How many of you have heard the name great American author John Steinbeck? Grapes of Wrath, Mice and Men, and so on. He has a wonderful quote. He says, people remember a story if it is only their story. When you, simple example is, when you look at Facebook or wedding pictures, when you look at a group photo and you are in it, where do you look first? Yourself. You know, you are looking good, your eyes are not closed and stuff like that. Is the sari looking good? You know, you are looking at yourself. People remember that story if it is their story. Anything is alien and foreign is forgotten. Anything that is familiar is remembered. So this is part one. This is John Steinbeck's quote. The second one is the definition of a itihasa. Okay, I'll come back to case study in a minute, but what is the definition of ityasa? Dharmartha kama, everyone knows, Dharmartha kama mokshanam upadesham samanvitam purva vruttam katha yuktam itihasam prachakshate. To create this as a margadarshan, as a guidebook, okay, for what? To understand, learn more about dharma, artha, kama, moksha. It is created. And how is it created? Purva vruttam katha yuktam. A past incident, actual incident is taken and it is told to us in a katha form. Katha form in a way that is factual but that is also entertaining. That is factual but that is also entertaining. That's the reason. We have many people from medical profession here. Okay, so I know them. Medical profession, raise your hand. A lot of them I know. Okay, how many of from the business school? Like MBAs and stuff like that. Law, legal. Oh, nobody from legal profession. We can talk about lawyers for the rest of the time here, okay? And, so what happens? They use case studies. I don't know about medical profession so much, but the business case studies, what are they? Actual company incident that really happened. But it is used to teach. And in order to teach, certain modifications are made. You see that in the Mahabharata, you also see that in Ramayana. Not that they have touched the factual history. Factual history they have not done. But what they have done is, sometimes it is told in such a way. In fact, both Mahabharata and Ramayana, actually Yashadip gave a great lecture this morning. Both Ramayana and Mahabharata actually directly don't give answers to everything. And there is a reason behind it. In a way, they do give an answer, but not on a platter. They actually they want you to think and find the answer. Then you get the excitement. Isn't that the same thing with a case study? They give you a case study, then 4 or 5 questions and write a case paper. And you know, somebody writing this way that we should go and buy this company and at this price, that person can also get A grade. And somebody says, no, we should not buy this company and here are the reasons, that person may also get a grade. So it is like depending on how you actually think about it. So to make us think, that is also what Nyaya Darshana does, how to think properly and reach the final answer. And that's why they are created. We need to stop? No. Okay.
I want to ask you also, how did you get those points? Can you tell in a nutshell about the dating of Ramayana? And taking this forward, may I also request Sri Devdharji to say a few words, because your presence here is so nice. You can just add to what he says and educate us about your work. It will be great. Thank you.
So, and that will be a good segue. I'll briefly say how did I figure out the dating of Ramayana. And then he is the Valmiki Ramayana expert here, okay? So I'll just get him and let him say what he wants to say. 600 references, but if you want to nail down an approximate period, how many of you have used vernier caliper? Most of you? Okay, those of you who haven't used, just don't worry, close, relax for next 2 minutes and you'll be fine, okay? Vernier caliper has 2 scales when you want to measure something. One is the main scale that kind of you put it here and approximate number. And then the secondary vernier scale, you look which line matches with which one and then some calculation and you get the number. It's like that. So these 6 references I'm going to briefly mention, they bring you right to that area of 14,000 or 12,000 BC plus minus 2,000 years. Not before, not after. Okay? So for example, everyone knows the timing of Rama's birth, Chaitra, Shukla, Navami. Okay? Now let me ask you, what was the season when Ram was born? Huh? Spring. Okay. Very good. I love that answer. Okay? So spring season and Chaitra, Shukla, Navami. This year, what was the day? Was it 17 April? 17 April, right? Okay, 17 April, we celebrated Rama Janma, okay? What was the season on 17 April? Huh? No. You cannot change the definition that fast. Okay, the astronomy definition is 21st March plus minus 1 month is a spring season, guys. That's our Indian definition. So this year we celebrated Rama Janma Chaitra Shukla Navami in spring season. Are you saying Ramayana happened in our times? No. Now remember what I said, the 2000 year clock. So right now Chaitra is happening in Vasanta spring season, Vasanta Rutu. If you go back 2000 years to the time of what? Kalidas, Jesus, whoever you want to call it, okay? Aryabhata. 2000 years, still there was a Chaitra Mas in the spring season. Are you saying Ramayana happened 2000 years ago, time of Kalidasa? No? Okay. I'll just give you a benefit of doubt. Just for the sake of thing, let's go another 2000 years, which is to 2000 BC. Okay, which is the Maurya period and so many other things happening there. Are you saying Ramayana happened 3000 years ago? Definitely no. So something is wrong about that understanding. If you go and read Valmiki Ramayana and the descriptions, you will find, do you know what is the description when Rama Janma is happening or Chaitra occurring during the Ramayana time? Chaitram Sri, when he is going to be coronated, and instead of being coronation, he was sent to the Vanvas. Chaitram Sri Manayam Masa Punya Pushpita Kanana. In the Ramayana it says that was the time of Chaitra when the forests were blooming with flowers. So if it's not Vasanta Rutu, because Ramayana did not happen in our time, so we have to go backwards. 2000 years back, we get the Shishira Rutu. Like how many of you think the forests are blooming with flowers in Ayodhya during the month of February? We were there in December. Were there, I mean, there was a construction going on, but were there flowers, trees blooming? Absolutely not. So it cannot be that time. It cannot be that time. That is my first clue, by the way. So the Chaitra Shukla Navami is correct, but when Ram was born, the descriptions of Valmiki Ramayana, they are not referring to Vasanta Rutu. But the problem with Vasanta Rutu is they could refer to Vasanta Rutu because we have lots of flowers. The problem is we have to say Ramayana is happening now or in the last 2000 years, which is not acceptable to any one of you like me. Agree? So now I have to go back through Shishira Rutu, through Hemanta Rutu, and possibly come at the time of the what we call Deepavali or just before Deepavali, like Vijayadashmi. That is the time when we have the flowers, Sharad season, the heavy rain is gone and everything is a flower. So I said maybe approximately it is that season. Then that's one reference. Then second, but we don't have to take a guess. Because when Ram, Lakshman, Sita are living in Panchavati and Hemanta Rutu comes, the Lakshman describes this. He says, Nivrutta Akasha Shayana Pushyanita Himaruna. In the Hemanta season, which is what? November, December. Sun is setting on Nakshatra Pushya. If this coming November, December, if you check, the sun will be setting on Purvashada, Uttarashada and Mula Nakshatra. There is a shift of about 13 to 14 Nakshatra, about 13 to 14,000 years. So that is the second reference. Then right now, Vasanta, what is that? Ashwina month comes in the Sharad season. So I'll just quickly complete. So Ashwina month comes in the, today comes in the Sharad season. But when south side Vanara party is looking for Sita, and you know they started at the end of Sharad, then there is a descriptions of Hemanta is gone, Shishira is gone, and now Vasanta Rutu has come. And Angad is frustrated. He says so many months have gone. And he says, I'm not going back to Sugriva. And he says, Vayam Ashwa Yuje Masi Kala Sankhya Vyavastita Prastita Sopi Chatita Kimatah Karyam Uttaram. Now the Vasanta Rutu has come. The month of Ashwin is also passing away. How are we going to achieve our purpose? So Ashwin Mass during the Ramayana time was coming in the Vasanta Rutu. And just quickly the last one. If you look at the pole star of the Ramayana times, both pole stars are very clearly explained. So in the north it says Brahma Rashir Vishuddhasya Shuddhasya Paramarshaya Archishmantah Prakashante Dhruvam Sarve Pradakshinam. So the Saptarshis are going around the bright pole star called Brahma Rashi, which is Abhijit, which is Vega. Again, if you do the astronomy, that takes you to 14,000 years. And the Canopus, I think we talked about Canopus a little bit. Canopus to the south, Right now it could be seen anywhere in India. Ramayana says if you wanted to see canopus during the Ramayana times, you have to go all the way to the southern tip of India. Not only that, then you have to climb the Mount Mahindra, and then only you could see canopus, because canopus has become a Dhruva star. So if you look at all these 6, they bring you to about 14,000 years, 12,000 BC plus minus 2,000 years. We have a time? Yeah. Take few minutes.
I have a very quick question to Nilesh ji. Here. Sure.
Namaskar everyone. Thank you very much. So my work is also related to the Valmiki Ramayana. Last 6 years I have been researching the Valmiki Ramayana in Sanskrit. This is my, I used to run a business, and now I do this full time, researching the Valmiki Ramayana and making short format videos. There's a 100-episode video series called 21 Notes on the Valmiki Ramayana. And also doing talks in, with schools and colleges. We are all familiar with the story of Ramayana. However, the story that we know is not actually what is described in the original Valmiki Ramayana. Most students, if you ask them today, they would describe the story of Ramayana as Dashrath asked Ram to leave, and then in the forest there was some incident about Shabri. Hanuman flew to Lanka, there was some incident of Lakshman Rekha, and afterwards Ram asked Sita to leave because of something a washerman said, etc. Everything is not according to the Valmiki Ramayana. It was surprising to me when I read it first, and if that is the Praman, that is the Itihas, then that is very different from the Ramayana that we think we know. And therefore I started this work of presenting the original Valmiki Ramayana for today's people. Thank you very much. My name is Yashodip Deodhar. Yes. Yes, more important than that is 21 Notes, which is the YouTube channel on which the 100-episode Valmiki Ramayana video series is presented. Yes.